The sun hung low in the sky like a bloodshot eye, casting long shadows over the dusty streets of Red Hollow, a forgotten speck on the map of the American frontier. It was the kind of town where dreams came to die, where men with calloused hands and hardened hearts gathered to trade in horses, cattle, and sometimes, human lives. Clara Everett stood on the makeshift stage in the back of the Rusty Nail saloon, her wrists bound with coarse rope that bit into her skin, her once vibrant blue dress now torn and stained from weeks of captivity. The air was thick with the acrid smell of tobacco smoke, unwashed bodies, and cheap whiskey, and the murmurs of the crowd, a motley crew of ranchers, outlaws, and drifters swirled around her like a storm about to break. She felt their eyes on her, hungry and appraising, as if she were no more than a heifer at market. "Ladies and gentlemen, though I see few of either here tonight," the auctioneer bellowed, his voice gravelly from years of shouting over crowds, "we have a fine specimen up for bid." Miss Clara Everett, 22 years young, strong as an axe and pretty as a prairie flower. Starting bid, $20. Clara's heart hammered in her chest. A wild thing desperate to escape. How had it come to this? Just 3 weeks ago, she had been safe on her family's homestead in the rolling hills of Kansas, tending to the garden and dreaming of a simple life with a kind man. But bandits had raided in the dead of night, killing her father, scattering her mother and siblings, and dragging her away as spoils. They'd sold her to a traveling slaver who specialized in exotic goods for the frontier towns, and now here she was, being auctioned off like cattle. She lifted her chin, forcing her green eyes to meet the gaze of the men below, refusing to let them see her tremble. But inside, fear coiled like a snake, ready to strike. The bids came fast and furious, each one a nail in the coffin of her freedom. "25. Shouted a burly man with a scar across his cheek, his grin revealing yellow teeth. "30. Countered another, a wiry fellow in a tattered vest, his eyes gleaming with malice. Clara scanned the room, searching for any sign of mercy, but found only leers and lust. The saloon was dimly lit by flickering lanterns, the walls adorned with faded wanted posters and shelves of half-empty bottles. Tables were scattered haphazardly, littered with cards and coins from abandoned games. In the corner, a piano player hammered out a discordant tune, as if to mock the gravity of the moment. $40. The auctioneer echoed, slamming his gavel for emphasis. "Do I hear 50? Clara's mind raced back to her childhood, to the stories her grandmother told of strong women who escaped fate's cruel grasp. But those were fairy tales, and this was reality, a harsh, unforgiving, and all too real. She tugged subtly at her bonds, but they held fast, a reminder of her helplessness. The crowd grew rowdier, some men jostling for a better view, others whispering crude speculations about what they'd do with her once she was theirs. A wave of nausea washed over her, but she swallowed it down, determined not to give them the satisfaction of her tears. As the bids climbed at a 60, 70, 80, the door to the saloon creaked open, letting in a gust of dry wind that stirred the dust on the floor. A tall figure stepped inside, his silhouette framed by the dying light outside. He was broad-shouldered, with a weathered Stetson pulled low over his eyes, a long duster coat flapping slightly at his heels. Ethan Cole moved with the quiet confidence of a man who had faced down storms and stampedes, his boots thudding softly against the plank floor as he made his way to the bar. He wasn't the regular in Red Hollow, he was a drifter cowboy, known in these parts for breaking the wildest horses and vanishing like smoke when the job was done. But tonight, something drew him here, a restlessness in his soul, perhaps, or the whispers of fate. He ordered a whiskey, neat, and leaned against the bar, his dark eyes flicking toward the stage. There she was, Clara, standing proud amidst the degradation, her auburn hair tousled but shining under the lantern light. Ethan's jaw tightened. He'd seen auctions like this before, women treated as property in a land where law was as thin as the air. It stirred memories he'd long buried. His sister, Amelia, taken years ago by similar scum, never to be seen again. He sipped his drink, the burn steadying him, as the bids reached $100. $110. Yelled a portly rancher from the front, his belly straining against his suspenders. The auctioneer grinned, sensing the fever in the room. $120. Going once. Clara's breath caught. This was it, the end of her autonomy. But then, from the back. That deep, resonant voice cut through the noise like a knife through butter. $500. The saloon fell into stunned silence, the piano player's hands freezing mid-note. All eyes turned to Ethan, who stood unmoved, his expression as stoic as the mountains. The auctioneer blinked, wiping sweat from his brow. "Did I hear that right, stranger?" "500. Ethan added once, his hand dipping into his coat to produce a leather pouch bulging with coins of his life savings, earned from years of back-breaking labor on ranches across the territory. Whispers erupted. Who is he? That's more than a man's worth. Must be crazy. But no one challenged him. The auctioneer, recovering, called for higher bids, but the room remained quiet. "Sold, to the cowboy in the back." The gavel came down with finality, and Clara was shoved forward, her ropes cut none too gently. She stumbled but caught herself, her eyes locking onto Ethan's. In that moment, she saw not lust, but something else, a resolve, perhaps even kindness. It was a flicker, but it was enough to plant a seed of hope in her battered heart. Ethan paid without a word, the coins clinking into the auctioneer's greedy palms. He then turned to Clara, his voice low and steady. "Let's go." She followed him out into the cooling night, the stars emerging like pinpricks in a vast black canvas. His horse, a sturdy bay named Thunder, waited patiently at the hitching post, saddled and ready. Ethan untied the reins and mounted with ease, then extended a hand to help her up behind him. Clara hesitated, her mind screaming warnings, but what choice did she have? She took his hand loose yet gently and swung up, her arms wrapping tentatively around his waist as they rode out of town. The wind whipped at her face, carrying away the stench of the saloon, and for the first time in weeks, she breathed freely. They rode in silence for hours, the landscape shifting from sparse buildings to open prairie, dotted with sagebrush and the occasional cactus. The moon rose high, bathing everything in silver light, and Clara found herself studying the man who had just upended her fate. Who was he? Why had he spent a fortune on a stranger? Questions burned on her tongue, but exhaustion claimed her first, her head lolling against his back as sleep overtook her. When Clara awoke, the sun was rising, painting the horizon in hues of pink and gold. They were still riding, Ethan's posture unchanging, as if he could go on forever without rest. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice croaky from disuse. He glanced over his shoulder, his eyes meeting hers briefly. "My ranch, about a day's ride from here. You'll be safe there." Safe. The word hung in the air like a promise, but Clara had learned not to trust promises. "Why me? Why spend all that?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment, the only sound the rhythmic clop of Thunder's hooves. "Didn't like what I saw," he said finally. "Men treatin' a woman like livestock. Ain't right." It was a simple answer, but there was weight behind it, a story unspoken. Clara pressed no further, content for now to watch the world unfold around amid the endless grasslands, the distant mountains, the herds of wild mustangs thundering in the distance. They stopped midday by a trickling stream to water the horse and eat. Ethan shared jerky and hardtack from his saddlebags, and Clara devoured it, hunger gnawing at her insides. "Thank you," she murmured. He nodded, his gaze on the horizon. "No need. Just doing what's decent." As they continued, Clara's thoughts turned inward. She remembered her family, her father's laughter echoing across the fields, her mother's gentle hands teaching her to sew, her little brother's mischievous grin. Were they alive? Had they escaped the bandits? The uncertainty gnawed at her, but she pushed it down, focusing on the present. Ethan, sensing her turmoil, began to speak in low tones about the land they traversed, the history of the Comanche trails, the best spots for hunting elk, the way the weather could turn on a dime. His voice was soothing, a balm against her frayed nerves. By evening, as the sun dipped low again, they crested a hill, and there it was, Ethan's ranch. It was modest, a small cabin built of logs, a corral with a few horses, a barn weathered by wind and rain, smoke curled from the chimney, and a dog, a scruffy mutt named Scout, bounded out to greet them, tail wagging furiously. Ethan dismounted and helped Clara down, his touch brief and respectful. "Welcome," he said simply, leading her inside. The cabin was sparse but clean, a stone fireplace, a wooden table with 2 chairs, a bed in the corner draped with quilts. A spare room off to the side held a cat and little else. "You can have this," Ethan said, gesturing to the spare room. "I'll sleep in the barn if need be." Clara shook her head. "No, I won't put you out." But he insisted, fetching fresh water from the well and starting a fire to heat it for a bath. As she soaked in the tin tub behind a makeshift screen, the grime of weeks washing away, Clara felt a semblance of humanity return. Ethan cooked a simple meal of beans, cornbread, and coffee, and they ate in companionable silence. Afterward, as the fire crackled, she asked a question that had burned since the auction. "What do you want from me?" Ethan's eyes, shadowed by the firelight, met hers. "Nothing. You're free to go whenever. But if you stay, there's work to be done. Horses to tend, fences to mend. I could use the help, but it's your choice." Clara searched his face for deception but found none. For the first time, she allowed herself to relax, the warmth of the fire seeping into her bones. The days that followed blurred into a routine that healed as much as it challenged. Clara woke at dawn to the crow of a rooster, helping Ethan with chores. She learned to saddle horses, to repair tack, to cook over an open flame. Ethan was patient, teaching without condescension, his stories of the frontier weaving a tapestry of adventure and hardship. He spoke of his youth in Texas, of losing his parents to fever, of wandering the trails in search of purpose. But he skirted around his sister, the pain too raw. Clara shared her own tale as her love of books, her dreams of seeing the ocean, the nightmare of the raid. In those moments, a bond formed, fragile yet strong, like the first green shoots after a prairie fire. One afternoon, as they rode out to check on cattle, a storm brewed on the horizon, dark clouds rolling in like an angry herd. "We need to head back," Ethan warned, but the rain hit fast, soaking them to the skin. They took shelter in a rocky outcrop, huddling close for warmth. Clara shivered, and Ethan draped his coat over her shoulders. "They'll catch your death," she protested. He smiled faintly, the first real one she'd seen. "Been through worse." As the thunder roared, they talked deeper about loss, about hope. Clara confessed her fear of never finding her family. Ethan admitted his guilt over Amelia. "I should have been there," he whispered. She placed a hand on his arm. "You can't save everyone, but you saved me." The ranch life suited Claire more than she expected. She discovered a strength she didn't know she had, her hands growing tough from labor, her spirit mending with each sunrise. Scout became her shadow, following her as she gathered eggs from the coop or weeded the small vegetable patch. Ethan watched her transformation, a quiet admiration in his eyes. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the stars, Clara turned to him. "Why did you really bid everything?" He sighed, staring into the night. "Amelia was auctioned off just like you. I was too young, too scared to stop it. Swore I'd never let it happen again if I could help it." Tears pricked Clara's eyes. "I'm sorry." He shook his head. "Don't be. You're here now." In that vulnerability, something shifted. Clara leaned closer, her head on his shoulder, and he didn't pull away. The night air was alive with crickets, the world vast and full of possibility. But peace was fleeting. Word spread from Red Hollow about a cowboy who spent a fortune on a woman, and soon, trouble brewed. A group of rough riders, led by the scar-faced man from the auction, rode onto the ranch one crisp morning, demanding Clara back. "You stole her fair and square, but we think the bid was rigged," the leader snarled, his hand on his gun. Ethan stepped forward, calm but firm. "She ain't property. She's free." Guns were drawn, tension thick as molasses. Clara, heart pounding, grabbed a rifle from the cabin. Standing beside Ethan, "Leave, or face the consequences," she warned, her voice steady. A standoff ensued, but the intruders, seeing the resolve in their eyes, backed down, cursing as they rode off. In the aftermath, Ethan turned to her. "You didn't have to do that." She smiled. "We're in this together now." That night, as they bandaged minor scrapes, their hands lingered, and in the quiet, a kiss was shared, a tentative, then passionate, a spark igniting into flame. Weeks turned to months, the ranch thriving under their joint efforts. Clara wrote letters, sending them via stagecoach in hopes of finding her family, but no replies came yet. Ethan taught her to shoot, to ride like the wind, empowering her further. They laughed over shared meals, dreamed under the stars, their love growing deep roots. But shadows lingered up. The bandits who took her might return, and Ethan's past haunted him. One day, a stranger arrived with news. Clara's mother was alive in a nearby town, searching for her. Joy flooded Clara, but so did conflict. "Go to her," Ethan urged. "I'll wait," but she shook her head. "Come with me. This is our home, but family is everything." Together, they prepared to ride out, the chapter of their story turning, but the bond unbreakable. The prairies stretched endless, full of trials and triumphs, and in each other's arms, they found the strength to face it all.